Oh, shalom, shalom, shalom. May the peace of God be with you this day. We're still discussing process and promise. We may be on this for the next few months, who knows. But the thing I'm loving about this conversation is that it's helping me clarify what I believe in also. It's also helping me put reality in place. Many times when we're just walking through life, we're not stopping and pausing to ask questions, then it becomes very difficult. So we've been looking at the story of Esther, and it's been very interesting to see how she was in a process for life. I think for me, the thing this book is really teaching me is process and promise are for life. We talked about a few videos ago, and the links to all the videos in the series are in the description. I talked about how the first promise was to be queen. The next promise was the salvation of the people of God, right? So the thing that strikes me is that we get so stuck on one promise that we don't realize it builds up to another. And then when that promise reaches, I don't know if you're like me, sometimes I get to the goal and it feels like such an anticlimax. It's not what I was waiting for. And I can imagine having become queen and now hearing that her people are in danger. She has to process how to sort it out. So the next prize becomes preserving the life of her people. And then she goes into prayer with her maids, and they pray for 3 days, dry fast, I think, because it says no drink, no food, no water for 3 days. And then she goes in to see the king. My expectation of her was that she'd go and tell the king, oh, have mercy, your people are trying to kill my people. First of all, the biggest prize for this day was to be invited into the king's presence, because the king had a rule that unless he invited you to his court, you were not welcome. Imagine. Not very different from our leaders these days. And I'm not talking political leaders there. I'm just talking about most leaders. You come in, unless you make an appointment, you're not welcome. I don't have time, I don't have bandwidth, I don't have space. But this king took it to another level. If you stepped into his courtroom without invitation, unless he extended the scepter, you died. And her need was so intense, and the king, of course, he's been married to her for a while, he knows she doesn't show up uninvited. And then he looks up. I can imagine he's sitting, I'm a storyteller. So I can imagine him sitting on his throne in conversation with his generals, and they're having this really intense conversation. Then he has a sense that something in the room has shifted, and he looks up, and there she is at the door. And because she was nothing like Vashti, he knew there was a problem. And I can also imagine his eunuchs knew there was a problem. And the soldiers knew, here there's a problem. Because Her Majesty doesn't just show up. Because she knows the rules. So he extends his scepter to her. And she comes and she bows before him and she says, my Lord, if it would so please you, would you have dinner with me? You risked your life to ask me to dinner. I can imagine that in the king's mind. And then she says, and not just you, but also Haman. If it would please you, would the two of you come for dinner? And so he's like, okay, we'll see you in the evening. So he prepares and he goes. And Haman goes home and his head is big and his chest is puffed and he's talking all this nonsense. And he tells his wife, I've been invited for dinner, but this Jew Mordecai, Haman doesn't know he's already playing into the plan of God to destroy him. He doesn't know. He also doesn't know that the queen is on assignment. So he beats his chest and he says, I have been invited to do dinner with the king and the queen. And they go. And at dinner, the king asks, what is it you need, even up to half my kingdom? She's like, just come for dinner tomorrow. I'll tell you then. And Haman goes out and meets Mordecai again and like, yeah. And the next day he goes for dinner. And it is at that next dinner that Esther says, my king, I plead for my life and the life of my people. It never strikes Haman that she's talking that she's a Jew until the king asks, who would do something like that? And she said, it is him. It is this man who sits at this table with us, who has sat at this table with us 2 nights in a row. It is him who has put our heads on the chopping block. Her life did not tell of where she came from. Her life spoke of a woman of dignity, of poise, of influence. Her life spoke of a journey, very specific journey of one who listened. And she sat and she waited. And the king rose up in a fit of rage and he walks out to calm himself. Because the man he has trusted to secure his nation has signed the edict to kill his wife. It didn't matter in that moment whether he knew it or not. And Haman threw himself upon the queen's lap to beg for his life, and at that moment the king came back. And just the look on the king's face told the guards, this man is done. His life is gone, kaput, finished. And so then they volunteered and they said, by the way, Haman has built a gallows in his compound, and that gallows is to hang Mordecai. The king remembers that Mordecai is the guy who saved him from death by Bigtha and Teresh. And then he looks at his queen, the love of his life at that point, and this guy has conspired to kill the very people who have protected his life. Doesn't make sense, right? But this is the thing. They were in process. They were living according to their assignment. They lived the daily instructions of the Lord. So God gave them wisdom. Process breeds wisdom. The promise needs wisdom for application. The promise needs wisdom for execution. The promise is stabilized by wisdom. Do you need wisdom in your journey? Could it be that where you are now is the place to learn what you need for the journey? Your promise does not change, even if your current circumstances are very hard. What must change is how we look at where we are. That's what must change. What must change is how we perceive our processes. Think about it. And let me know how I can pray for you.